Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Other Opinion. You know those concrete buildings everyone seems to either love or hate?
Yeah, they're pretty hard to miss.
Well, today we're diving deep into brutalism. I think you'll be surprised by what we found.
More than just concrete blocks.
Way more. And get this, it even ties into user interface design.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
We've got a Wikipedia article on brutalist architecture, a blog post on neo-brutalism in UI design from Klezer, and an article on this film called The Brutalist, about a fictional architect.
Sounds like we've got a lot to unpack.
Definitely. So before we get started, if you're new here, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our deep dives.
Yeah, we don't want you missing out.
All right, let's jump right in. That Wikipedia article right off the bat challenges a just concrete idea.
Really?
Yeah. It turns out the term New Brutalism was coined back in 1950.
1950, wow.
For a brick house in Sweden.
A brick house. Okay, so not concrete.
Not concrete. Then later, in 1955, architectural historian Rainer Banham.
I've heard that name.
He linked it to the French phrase béton brut, which means raw concrete.
So the concrete connection came a bit later.
Yeah, it seems like the core of the movement wasn't actually about concrete at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was more of a philosophy.
A philosophy, like a way of thinking about architecture.
Exactly. In fact, Banham actually called brutalism an ethic as much as an aesthetic.
An ethic. I like that.
And this whole idea of truth to materials really fascinated me.
Truth to materials? What's that all about?
Basically, brutalism celebrates the natural qualities of any material.
So not just covering everything up.
Right, like whether it's wood, brick, or, yes, even concrete.
So it's more about letting the material be itself.
Exactly. And this makes a lot of sense given its post-World War II emergence.
Right, a time of rebuilding.
Exactly. Extravagance was kind of out of fashion.
I can see that.
The article mentions these British architects, Allison and Peter Smithson.
Big names in brutalism.
Yeah, they saw brutalism as a way to create honest, functional buildings for modern life.
Driven by social ideals. And speaking of different perspectives, make sure you're subscribed and sharing this with your friends who think they know brutalism. We love seeing those numbers go up, and we love seeing your comments too.
Yes. We want to hear your other opinion on brutalism, so drop a comment below. Okay, so back to the article. So it highlights how brutalism wasn't just a Western thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was actually really popular in Soviet-era architecture and Eastern Europe.
Reflecting its link to socialist ideals.
Exactly. And you know what really surprised me?
What's that?
Just how many university buildings are mentioned in the article.
University buildings? Huh, hadn't thought about that.
Right, like there were tons.
Why do you think that is?
Well, the article mentions that there was a huge university boom in the 1960s.
Right, when brutalism was at its peak.
Exactly. Universities were like at the forefront of what's called architectural patronage.
Hold on, architectural patronage. I'm not sure everyone knows what that means.
You're right. We should probably explain that.
So basically, it means supporting and commissioning these big architectural projects.
Like being a patron of the arts, but for buildings.
Exactly. And universities back then, you know, with their progressive image.
Right. They wanted to be seen as modern and cutting edge.
They were in this unique position to champion these new and sometimes even controversial designs.
Like brutalism.
Exactly. Like, think about architects like James Stirling. They wouldn't have had the same freedom without this kind of patronage.
So universities were like the testing ground for brutalism.
In a way, yeah. That explains why so many campuses have these striking, sometimes even quirky, brutalist structures.
Let's get they were the perfect canvas for these bold ideas.
I love that. Speaking of quirky, the article mentions the beehives at St. John's College, Oxford.
Beehives.
Well, yeah, that's their nickname.
I love it.
And then you have the University of Sussex, designed by Basil Spence.
Another big name.
Yeah, he blended arts and crafts with modernism.
Interesting.
And the University of East Anglia has these ziggurats by Denise Lusdun.
Ziggurats. Wow.
I know, right? Sadly, though, they're closed now.
Oh, no. Why is that?
Because of that whole reinforced, autoclaved, aerated concrete issue.
Oh, right. I heard about that.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
It is. And for all the film buffs out there, the article mentions that Brunel University's lecture block was actually used as a location in A Clockwork Orange.
No way! Really? That's so cool.
I know, right?
That's awesome.
Okay, so we've talked about the philosophy, we've talked about university buildings, but we have to address the elephant in the room. Brutalism is definitely a controversial style.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, the Wikipedia article doesn't shy away from that at all.
Yeah, I mean, people either seem to love it or hate it.
Right. And the article mentions this British show called Demolition.
Demolition.
Yeah, viewers got to vote on which buildings they wanted to see demolished.
Yeah.
8 out of the 12 chosen were brutalist.
Oof, that's got a sting.
I know, right?
Oh.
And it's not hard to see why. The article talks about how concrete weathers really poorly in damp climates.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you get those stains and that sense of decay.
Exactly. And some people just find brutalist buildings cold and impersonal.
And then you have those associations with totalitarianism, which doesn't help.
Yeah, not a good look. But on the other hand, the article mentions that there are actually preservation efforts underway in the UK.
Really? So some people are actually fighting to save these buildings.
Yeah. And that just goes to show that for some people, they really do see the beauty in the honesty and the rawness of brutalism.
It's all about perspective. If you're enjoying this back and forth, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. We want to hear your other opinion on brutalism, so let's get a conversation going.
All right, now let's get to that Clizzer blog post about neo-brutalism.
Neo-brutalism. Brutalism in UI design.
Yes. This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about this neo-brutalism.
So essentially, it takes the core ideas of brutalism in architecture and applies them to the digital world.
So websites, apps, all that.
Exactly.
Brutalism for the digital age. I like it.
I know, right? So the blog post outlines these 5 key characteristics of neo-brutalism.
5 key characteristics. All right, lay them on me.
First up, asymmetrical layouts.
Asymmetrical layouts, so not your typical grid system.
Right. It's a direct challenge to those predictable, neatly aligned designs we're used to seeing.
It definitely grabs your attention.
Exactly. And speaking of grabbing attention, the second characteristic is bold, vibrant colors.
Makes sense. You need something to cut through all the noise online.
Right. And these high contrast palettes really pop.
So just like in architecture, neo-brutalism is about making a statement.
Definitely. And then, just like its architectural counterpart, neo-brutalism also embraces geometric shapes.
Squares, circles, triangles, all that.
All that. All used very deliberately to create structure.
Interesting.
And then there's the typography. It's large and bold, impossible to ignore.
Like shouting the message from the digital rooftops.
Exactly. And finally, one of the most intriguing characteristics.
Okay, I'm listening.
Raw and unpolished elements.
Raw and unpolished?
Like exposed grids, unfinished textures, even glitch effects.
Wow, they're really embracing the imperfections.
Right. It's like they're adding this tactile appeal and authenticity to the design.
Like a digital version of exposed concrete.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the blog post points out how this whole approach can create a really distinctive online experience.
But I imagine it could be a bit risky too, right? Like going too far with it.
Oh, absolutely. Because while it's visually striking, just like brutalism, neo-brutalism has to be used thoughtfully.
I could see that.
The blog post actually cautions against going overboard.
So it's about finding that balance between being bold and making sure users can actually use the thing.
Exactly. It's a delicate dance.
It is. The blog post actually mentions Figma as an example.
Figma, the design tool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And they also mention the outline, but it's not around anymore.
Oh, right. It shut down.
Yeah. Which kind of makes you think about how fleeting design trends can be.
What works now might not work later.
Exactly. It really shows how important it is to keep pushing boundaries and experimenting.
I love that. And if you're finding this exploration of neo-brutalism as interesting as we are, don't forget to hit subscribe and share this episode with your friends. Let's get more people thinking about these design choices.
Yes, spread the word.
All right, from buildings to websites. Now let's move on to the silver screen and that article about the Brutalist.
Okay, this one sounds fascinating.
It follows this Hungarian Jewish architect, Laszlo Toth, who's also a Holocaust survivor.
Wow, what a powerful backstory.
I know, right? And he's rebuilding his life in post-war America.
It's like a story of resilience and hope.
Exactly. And he designs this monumental community center called the Institute.
Sounds ambitious.
It is. And the article emphasizes that the film goes beyond just architecture.
Oh, so it's not just about buildings.
Right. It uses architecture as this lens to explore bigger themes.
Like what?
Like ambition, trauma, and the human spirit.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
I know, right? And get this, the production designer, Judy Becker.
I've heard of her. She's done some amazing work.
She actually used the architecture of concentration camps as inspiration for the Institute's design.
Wow, that's heavy.
I know. It adds such a powerful layer of meaning.
Connecting those horrific experiences with the concept of rebuilding and the brutalist aesthetic, it's incredibly poignant.
It is. Speaking of poignant, If this conversation is hitting home for you, hit that like button and leave us your other opinion in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts.
Yes. Tell us what you think.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and go back to the core elements of brutalism in architecture.
Sounds good.
What exactly makes it so distinctive?
Well, it's all about those recurring motifs, those elements that give it that unique look and feel.
So it's more than just raw concrete.
Way more. Remember, truth to materials.
Right.
You'll see brick, glass, steel, timber, even rough-hewn stone.
It's about embracing the honesty of the material, whatever it may be.
Exactly. And brutalist buildings are often massive and imposing.
Like those iconic blocky structures that dominate cityscape.
Yeah, yes, and they often use these repeating modular elements.
Like they're designed on a giant grid, almost like a Lego creation.
That's a great way to put it. Another key motif is functionality.
Form follows function.
Exactly. No unnecessary ornamentation, just pure purpose.
Which can lead to buildings that some people find harsh or even ugly.
Which explains the love it or hate it response to brutalism.
Right. But even if the aesthetic isn't your cup of tea, you have to admire the boldness.
Absolutely. It challenges our traditional notions of beauty.
Like they're saying, we're here, we're functional, deal with it.
I love that. And that statement can be quite powerful, especially for public buildings like government offices, libraries, universities.
Speaking of universities, the Wikipedia article had a whole section on university campuses and brutalism.
It's like those blocky structures really represented that post-war spirit of progress and intellectualism.
Definitely.
Universities were seen as innovative, and brutalist architecture embodied that.
It's like they were saying, we're not afraid to be different, to challenge the status quo.
Exactly. Plus, concrete was relatively inexpensive.
Which was important for institutions with limited budgets.
Practical and symbolic.
It is, and many of those brutalist university buildings are still around today.
Though they might not be as fashionable as they once were.
True. Brutalism has definitely fallen out of favor in recent decades.
There's definitely a perception of it being linked to urban decay and bleakness.
Yeah, it's often seen as cold and uninviting.
But there's a growing movement to appreciate and preserve these buildings.
Really?
Yeah, people are starting to recognize their historical and architectural significance.
I think that's great.
Me too. Brutalism tells a story about a specific time, place, and set of ideals.
We can learn a lot from it, even if the aesthetics aren't always appealing.
This deep dive is all about going beyond the surface level, beyond the concrete, to explore those deeper meanings.
I love that. And speaking of loving things, if you're loving this episode, hit that like button and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more thought-provoking deep dives.
Don't forget to leave a comment, too. Let us know what you think about brutalism. Love it, hate it, somewhere in between. We want to hear it all.
Now, let's move to an often overlooked aspect of brutalist architecture. The interior spaces?
The interiors.
Yeah, what's going on inside these concrete giants?
You'll have to keep watching to find out.
Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Other Opinion. We're in the middle of our deep dive into brutalism, and right before the break, we were just about to explore the interior world of these concrete giants.
All right, let's get into it. What's hiding inside those brutalist buildings?
Well, brutalist interiors often feature the same raw, exposed materials you see on the outside.
So concrete, brick, steel, all that good stuff.
All that. It's not just a facade. Those design principles carry through to the inside as well.
So the architects weren't afraid to let those materials speak for themselves?
Exactly. They'd create this unique, sometimes even stark atmosphere.
I imagine it could feel quite cold.
It can, but it can also feel authentic.
Like you're experiencing the building in its purest form.
Yeah. And I bet those exposed concrete walls create some interesting acoustics.
You're right. Brutalist buildings are known for their echoey interiors.
Which could be a good or a bad thing, depending on what you're looking for.
Definitely not ideal for a quiet library.
Probably not. But again, it's about pushing boundaries, right?
Exactly. Sometimes comfort takes a backseat to making a statement.
And that statement can be beautiful, even if it's not conventionally beautiful.
It challenges our ideas of what architecture should be.
Totally. So the next time you come across a brutalist building, don't just admire it from afar.
Go inside and experience it.
Exactly. Take a moment to really see it. Appreciate its unique qualities, both inside and out.
Great advice. And if you're enjoying this deep dive so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more explorations like this.
Yes. And if you're a fan of brutalism, or even if you're not, share this episode with your friends and get them thinking too.
We're all about fostering those different perspectives here.
All right, let's shift our focus now to some specific examples of brutalist buildings around the world.
Okay, I'm ready. Give me a virtual tour of Brutalism.
Let's start in the UK, where Brutalism was born.
The birthplace of Brutalism, awesome.
The Barbican Centre in London is a must-see.
The Barbican, I've heard of that one.
It's this massive concrete complex,
How massive are we talking?
like a city within a city. It's got apartments, theaters, art galleries, even a conservatory.
A conservatory inside a brutalist building. That's not what I was expecting.
I know, right? It's one of the things that makes the Barbican so unique.
So you have that raw, brutalist exterior, but full of surprises inside.
Exactly. It's a photographer's dream with all those angles and textures.
I bet.
And it really showcases how brutalist architecture can actually foster community.
Bringing people together.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
so many different spaces for people to come together. It's like a concrete
A
utopia.
concrete utopia. I love it.
Okay, speaking of utopias, let's jump across the pond to Boston City Hall in the U.S.
Another iconic brutalist building.
It is. It's known for its imposing concrete facade and its controversial design.
A true love it or hate it building.
It definitely makes a statement. And it reminds us that brutalism wasn't just for residential or cultural buildings.
Right. It played a role in government and institutions, too.
Exactly. Speaking of institutions, let's head down to Yale University to see the Yale Art and Architecture Building.
Designed by Paul Rudolph.
Yes. It's considered one of the most important brutalist buildings in the U.S.
What sets it apart?
It's incredibly complex and dynamic.
Like how?
Like different levels, interlocking spaces, a real sense of movement and energy.
Like the building itself is a work of art.
Exactly. Okay, ready for a change of scenery?
Always. Where are we headed next?
Let's venture to Asia, to the Chandigarh Capital Complex in India.
Designed by the legendary Le Corbusier.
Yes. Seeing it in person is an experience. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's a sprawling complex of government buildings showcasing Le Corbusier's signature style.
Clean lines, geometric forms, all set against the Indian landscape, a modernist dream.
It really is. And it shows how brutalism went beyond regional and cultural boundaries.
A truly global movement.
I love that. Ending our tour with a building that transcends borders and styles.
What a great way to wrap up our virtual tour.
If you're as excited about brutalism as we are now, hit that subscribe button and share this episode with your friends. Let's spread the brutalist love.
Yes, spread the word. This virtual tour was just a glimpse into the diversity and global reach of brutalist architecture.
We've only scratched the surface. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from history and philosophy to that unexpected connection to UI design.
And that amazing virtual tour.
I know, right? Brutalism is truly a global phenomenon.
It is.
Don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment below sharing your other opinions on brutalism.
Or anything else we talked about.
We love hearing from you.
We do.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of brutalism.
It's been a blast.
And just a quick reminder that The Other Opinion is an AI-powered show.
So we might get some things wrong.
But hey, that's part of the fun, right?
It is.
If something we talked about really piqued your interest, do your own research and let us know what you find.
We love learning new things.
We do. We hope this deep dive gave you a new perspective on brutalism.
Maybe you even found yourself agreeing with the other opinion.
That's what we're all about.
Expanding our minds and considering different perspectives.
Until next time, keep those other opinions coming.
See ya.